Hi, Gary.
I
How
know,
are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice and sunny out here in California.
I heard the West Coast is the best coast.
The West Coast is the best coast, but that's my opinion.
But if you look at this chat and you see the hundreds of people that are with us this afternoon, they are from all over the place, right? I saw Oregon, Texas, Canada, Alaska, even New Jersey. No, Alani, there are people here from New Jersey. Can you believe it?
I'm in New Jersey.
I am. I'm
You
here.
are.
Yes. So even the Garden State, I think the other thing to think about is we see it every day in the lab, the diversity of missions from arts to an organization that's drilling water wells in Kenya. You're just this afternoon, you are in the most remarkable of companies. So I wanted to say thank you to Noelani for your work inside the lab, creating a real sense of belonging there. Don't go too far. Stay backstage in the green room where we have, I think we have beverages and snacks. And then come on back at the end and you'll give me some cues and I'll offer some A's.
Sounds good.
All right. See you in a bit.
Bye, everyone.
So, good afternoon or hello, wherever the time zone is. So we talked, Noelani talked about this notion that nonprofit, the work that we do to support nonprofits is both a joy and an honor. That doing work with meaning and purpose is about as good as it gets. And I know that's real for you. I want you to know it's real for me too. When I left corporate America in 1997 to become the executive director of GLAAD, now it is true I encountered a big fat mess, but did I look great or what? But I also had this aha moment that has propelled me ever since. Every single day, when I was at GLAAD, I was engaged in work that made a difference to somebody. And as messy as that gig was, it was my dream job. I was impacting the lives of people I didn't even know. So take this victory, for example, our work to secure same-sex wedding announcements in the New York Times. That was in 2003. Just last week, 23 years after that victory, I received an email from a mom thanking me for everything that I did to ensure that her 24-year-old son could be an openly gay college student at Fordham University, where I went to school. And she hopes that he will marry someday and that his announcement will appear in the New York Times like this one of Stephen and Dan's. Holy smokes, nonprofit leaders. This is what you do every day. You touch the lives of people you do not even know. In the case of that email, it was the life of someone that wasn't even born yet. So that's one side of it. But I know the flip side too. These jobs can suck the life out of you, especially if you run a smaller nonprofit. So I've taken my sort of advocacy DNA and I'm pointing it right at you. Doing what I can to advocate that you get the support and resources you need to be the best leader and manager you can be. You know, I hear people say that our world is kind of broken and divided, right? Short on leaders, people who can rally us behind a cause, bring us together, lift us up. Well, not from where I sit. Just think about my own community for a minute, or yours, right? And you'll see the person who runs the Y, the local food pantry, the kids' jazz ed program, the museum. These enterprises are what gives communities their humanity. And that's where you find leadership. You find it right here with each of you who took the time to join me today. So thank you for taking time to invest in your own professional development. And special thanks if you're a board member. I know that there are so many organizations that would benefit from more board members who spent more time investing in understanding and learning what it takes to succeed as a volunteer leader. Okay. Are you sitting down? Because I need to tell you something. It's important. I believe you're going to find it a bit provocative. You ready? There is no way your nonprofit organization will ever thrive without a high-functioning board. Should I say it again? No thriving without a high-functioning board. Did you just break out in a cold sweat? At the risk of practicing without a license, can I ask you a question, and can you throw the answer in the chat? How'd that statement make you feel? There's no way your organization will ever thrive without a high-functioning board. How does that statement make you feel? Give it to me in the chat. I can see you quite clearly from here, at least what you say. Now, your board might be high-functioning right now. Oh, here we go. Sad. Whoa. Sad. Relieved. Vindicated. Truth. Defeated. Inspired. I can't convince my board of this. Angry. Affirmed. Bring it. Okay. Who said bring it? I wish I could see that really again. Bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it. Laura, Miranda, I'm bringing it. Okay. Now, you may have a high-functioning board, but even if it is, I'm asking you, stick around with me for this next little while, because there is always room for improvement. But if the chat is any indication, right? If that is any indication, there's a lot to learn, a lot of room to improvement, and I'm here. So, I'm asking you to calm down. I might have you a little worried right now, but I want you to stay with me because I'm here to help. And in this workshop, I'm going to teach you 3 simple steps you can take to start transforming your board right away to become high functioning. I get that you have anxiety. I get that it's real. And I hear it every single day. And here's what I hear. My board is dysfunctional. Help me. Now, my clients and my members of the Nonprofit Leadership Lab, they get really specific with me. I ask them, how do you know your board is dysfunctional? And here's what they've actually told me. Real quotes. You ready? Here's one. We are in serious trouble, at risk of not making payroll, and one of our board members asked if we could do better than Subway for lunch at our next meeting. Another. I have to remind board members what committees they're on. Next. So you ask the board to make a significant effort for a milestone anniversary, and they vote to plant flowers. Here's one, and you can put yes in the chat if any of these resonate for you. Yeses are always fun for me to see flying through the chat. I constantly catch board members playing Candy Crush on their phones. I've never played Candy Crush. All right, here one. A member of the board says, bylaws, schmylaws. I don't even know what they mean or why we need them. And here's my favorite. I'm afraid my mother will be mad at me if I ask her to make a donation. All right. You all know I am not making any of these things up. Marcel Johnson, did they really talk about the Subway thing? I'm so sorry. Real people said these things to me. I know them to be true, and they're just a sample. I could ask you to add your own to this chat, but then we'd be here all day, and I have some lessons to teach you, and I know you're busy. Now, I would like you to remain seated because I have another second truth I need to share with you. Are you ready? Most nonprofit boards are dysfunctional. Most nonprofit boards are dysfunctional. Okay, so now you're sitting there thinking, all right, Joan, I am just lost. I had heard you were this joyful champion for nonprofit leaders. I came here for guidance, for tools. I came here to learn how to fix my board, and you just clobbered me with 2 statements. That most nonprofit boards are kind of broken, and that my organization can't thrive unless my board isn't broken. Are you kidding me? What's up here, Joan? Here's what's up. Most of you find your dysfunctional board frustrating, and it drives you crazy. Maybe you're you're a board chair and you can't get anybody to even sit on a committee. Maybe you're an ED and the whole thing is just eating you up emotionally. Or you stick your head in the sand, you try to ignore the board altogether and just go it alone. Well, I want you to know, and I speak from experience here, that a high-functioning board is possible. Lisa, you want me to say it a little louder for those in the back? Am I speaking too loudly? Am I shouting? Is my bow tie crooked? Yes, it is. Hold on. There we go. Nope, crooked the other way. There we go. Now, my job today is to move you from despairing about your board to believing that a high-functioning board is possible, to teach you exactly what to do, and to offer you tools that can actually help you transform your board. Tools that I know work, and tools that are not going to take a lifetime. Tools that will help you transform your board in a matter of months and not years, and I mean it, and I have proof, and I'll share some stories. And we're going to cover all of this during this short workshop. If you got some sense of this, I'm excited. Now, later in the workshop, I'm going to provide you with 2 valuable resources you can use right away. One of them is a checklist that's going to help you determine areas of board strengths and weaknesses. And the other is a customizable spreadsheet to help you in an effort to design an ideal board. What skills and experience and attributes will be required, with suggestions on how to use it to get the right folks on your bus. And as long as you stay with me through until the Q&A, you'll get these bonuses. Also, near the end of the workshop, I'm going to answer some questions and invite you to go deeper with me inside the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. And if you become a member of our remarkable community, you will also get a digital copy of our 2022 Board Bible, a compendium of some of the best material that we have inside the lab that will help strengthen your board. But before I do that, I guess we have to answer this important question. Sorry, I was reading the chat. Because if we don't answer this question and get to the root of this problem, we can't solve for it, can we? Why are boards dysfunctional? Why are boards dysfunctional? Let's tackle it for a minute. Why do you think that's true? Throw some more ideas in the chat. I'll read some of them. But they fly by, so forgive me if I don't get them all as they come. So why do you think boards are dysfunctional? But even if we answer the why, and I'll look for them here, inexperience, egos, they're not managed effectively. People are dysfunctional. Wow. Adam King, not clear on their world. Mary Wolf, right? Liz Beckley, egos that get in the way of collaboration. We are human. We understand the commitment. Just read them as you go. You'll see lots and lots of reasons that boards may be dysfunctional. But we can answer the why, but that's not going to be enough. Because even after I persuade you that a high-functioning board is mission critical to your organization, and I show you what that actually looks like, you're going to be left hanging. You're going to want to know how your organization can get there. And I plan to answer that question. So first, let me tell you the story about Teddy Valenzuela. 2 years ago, her board had met only 4 times in the last 5 years. I'll tell you about Claire Gilbert, who runs a legal advocacy organization, who never believed her board nominations committee would even understand why non-lawyers would be interested in board service for an organization that works to overturn wrongful convictions. In Teddy's case, it took a little more than a year to turn things around. For Claire, 9 months. I speak the truth. You can do this. So here's my thinking, and I heard it from some of you here into the chat as well, right? There are, in my mind, 2 answers to the question about why most boards are dysfunctional. 2 reasons. The first, we aren't all on the same page about what it looks like when a board is high functioning.
We sure know what it looks like when it's not. But if we don't know what it looks like when we have one, right? How are we going to build towards it? I don't think we all know the answer to that. The second reason is we need to know what it looks like when it's high functioning. So we're not all on the same page about why it matters, and we don't know what it looks like when it's high functioning. So let's spend a few minutes understanding these two issues so we can then dig into exactly how to fix your board. So, why a high functioning board matters. Don't worry. I plan to draw a good solid picture of what a high functioning board looks like, but I want to stick with the why for just a moment. You see, I actually believe that what really motivates change is not recognizing that something isn't working, but rather seeing the possibility that change can bring. So we have to answer this question. How will things be better for me, for our work, if I invest in a high functioning board? Right? But before I answer that one, toss something in the comments for me. Why do you think a high functioning board matters so much? Why does it matter? Why can't you just go about your business and let them go off and do their thing or not do their thing or not raise money? Why does a high functioning board matter? Toss it into the chat and then I'll offer you my 3 answers. To carry out the mission and the vision. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. Why does a high functioning board matter? Because people's time is precious. Thanks, Linda. Because they will energize the population you want to serve. Succession planning. The board can help you move forward. A high functioning board matters. Wow, things are going so fast. Preventing burnout. Inefficiencies are time consuming. It's a reflection of community engagement. These are great answers. Great answers to attract other high performing individuals. You all are doing great. Now let me offer you my 3 answers. If you build a high functioning board, you will not have to go it alone. Number 1. Number 2, you will make smarter, richer decisions. And 3, your organization will be more powerful. Truth. Not alone, smarter decisions, more impactful. Let's start with the first one. You will not have to go it alone. You feel that way a lot, don't you? With board chairs unclear about their roles and EDs often quite reluctant to ask for help, you can feel like a lone wolf. You know what it would be like? It would be like being in the cockpit of a twin-engine jet all by yourself. Imagine if Captain Sully Sullenberger, who somehow gets all the credit, had been alone in the cockpit of that 737 that he landed on the Hudson River. Lucky for him, he was not. He had a co-pilot, a thought partner, someone with different views, different skills, a different vantage point. There were 2 of them. Jeffrey Skiles, arguably as important in saving that plane as Captain Sullenberger. That's why it matters. Because leadership in a nonprofit organization is shared, like co-pilots. Think of your organization like a twin-engine jet. Each jet must be high-functioning because the leadership is shared. Stop already with the board is my boss. Stop already with the I supervise the executive director. It's not really like that. You're partners. You need each other to avoid turbulence, to navigate turbulence if you hit it, and fly that plane smoothly to its noble destination. If you feel like you are doing it alone, it's time to realize that not only is it the wrong model, it's also a fast path to burnout. Number 2, your organization will make smarter, richer decisions. Okay, so imagine Sully's in that cockpit and co-pilot Jeff Skiles says, "Hey, I'm over here, Sully. If you need anything, just tell me what you need." That's not what he needed. It's not what he wanted, and that might have led to tragedy. That sit back there and let me know what you need. On a board, I call that the Make Way for Ducklings board. You're the executive director, you lead, and the board members follow. Maybe not even in a cute little straight line like these little cute little ducklings right here. See this picture? Unsee it. It's not helpful. It's not shared leadership. You see, boards have their own jobs to do, their own work. And they're not supposed to follow. They're supposed to lead with you. A board with diverse skills, expertise, and backgrounds offers you so much more than you can afford and exactly what you need. Perspectives, insights, resources to help you make way smarter decisions than you would make all by yourself. How to fire a toxic staff member. How great would it be when the HR generalist on your board guides you through talking points? You thinking about a merger? Something a lot of organizations during the pandemic have considered. A discussion around a board table where a diverse group can ask you a long list of questions that you should consider in that first conversation could make all the difference. Or a visioning exercise about the future with 10 folks who have a diversity of backgrounds will result in a picture of the future that is far richer than one you would draw all by yourself. I mentioned Teddy Valenzuela a few moments ago. She's the executive director of Amanecer in Los Angeles. Their work is to empower underserved kids, adults, and domestic abuse victims to overcome barriers and significant life challenges through culturally competent, comprehensive mental health, psychiatric, and case management services. In Spanish, I love this, Amanecer means new beginnings. After being hired as the organization's ED about 2 years ago, she joined our nonprofit leadership lab. She knew she couldn't do the work alone, and she knew her board had an important role to play in the success of her organization. But what did she find? A board that wasn't even meeting. Well, it's not really true. The board had met 4 times in the last 5 years. Not the 6 times the bylaws called for. There was a finance committee, but when you meet less than annually, it's pretty hard to stay close to those finances, isn't it? The board chair was pretty well-meaning, but neither she nor Teddy really understood the role of the chair or the importance of the partnership. It was dysfunctional. Teddy was in charge of the board, not her job. Make way for ducklings. And the board was asleep at the switch. When Teddy would send emails, she would hearken what I consider to be the official insect of the nonprofit board, the cricket. She heard a lot of crickets. Teddy also needed some work-life balance. Her wife was battling cancer. Every place Teddy turned, she was overwhelmed. She knew she needed help. Now she sought out resources from our leadership lab and was determined to transform her board. The resources are working. Teddy now meets regularly with her chair with clear agendas. They spent time educating the board about its vital roles, and they altered the bylaws to call for quarterly meetings. That's for a year, not for every 5 years. And they no longer worry if they're going to make quorum or not. I know that's kind of a low bar, right? But people come to the meetings. And in between meetings, committees meet. Yeah, committees. Their fund development committee is actually the most successful. How great is that? The board also took a really close look at its composition and quickly realized that the board was overrun with lawyers. I have nothing against lawyers, by the way. So they began to identify skill gaps. Today, the board has only 1 lawyer, and they have added finance and HR expertise. Board meetings are now engaging. Board members voice their opinions, and those opinions are valued. And fundraising, it's on the rise during a pandemic, thanks in large measure to the fact that Amana Ser board members have embraced their role as storytellers and ambassadors. Her organization is now built so that she can make smarter decisions, and she is less overwhelmed and alone because she is leading with her board. She's not alone. She's making smarter decisions. Item number 3, your organization will be more powerful. Not just because you will make smarter decisions, but because, and someone said this in the chat earlier, you will bring more people to your organization. Without a big posse of volunteers, board candidates, small dollar donors, major donors, corporate partners, you're not going to thrive. Without lots of folks who know about your work and its impact through the press or digital media, you will not have sufficient horsepower. Because at the end of the day, people equals power. And you know what? If you don't tell people about the work, they can experience the joy and privilege of being a part of it. My friend Jim Cohen is the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Minneapolis. Minneapolis, 2020. First a pandemic, and then the murder of George Floyd just blocks from his office. His heroics, not just as a leader, not just a leader of his organization, but as a community leader, were remarkable. I asked him how his board had responded to all this great work. Oh, I haven't had time to tell them, he said. It just hasn't been a priority. Oh my goodness, what a missed opportunity, right? So, had him pick up his phone and start recording short videos to send to his board. We branded them. We called them Did You Knows? 2-3 minutes tops, informal. It might be a success. Quote somebody, something somebody said to him. A data point that made a case for their work. Board members loved them, shared them. The board members were in the loop. They had stories to tell, and it was easy, dare I say, fun for Jim to do. What I call this is growing your army of the engaged. And the key to growing your army is your board. A group of well-informed and dedicated board members who are really enthusiastic about the work and will get out there and talk about it. They will think about people who should be connected to your organization, who would love the opportunity to be engaged. And a diverse board will bring you different people. If you're a founder, your board may likely be friends and family. You probably needed names for the 501c3 paperwork, right? But you all know too many of the same people. That's not true with a diverse board. Now, I can't imagine you'll argue with me. You can't go it alone. You want to make smarter decisions, and you want everyone in the universe to know about the impact of the work you're having. A high-functioning board is a non-negotiable. And now you want one of your very own, don't you? So, let's talk about this. What does it look like when it's working? A model of a high-functioning board. We've told you why it matters. Now, what does it look like? All right. Right. I'm looking at Sarah Lubarsky. A video seems much more fun and so much less work. You'll get less crickets, I swear, Sarah. So, there are 3 pillars that provide the foundation for a high-functioning board. And because pillar starts with a P, I decided that the 3 pillars should also start with P. I'm just that kind of gal. People, the right ones, partnership, a commitment to one, and proactive champions. When you've got those things, you have a high-functioning board. So let's bring this to life. because you need to actually see what it looks like when it's working so you got something to shoot for. First, let's talk about getting the right people at the table. So Claire Gilbert is a coaching client of mine. She's the executive director of the Georgia Innocence Project. Claire was promoted from within and came to me and said, I feel like an imposter. I have no work-life balance, and I don't even know if I should really stay in this job. Claire's board was filled with lawyers. Now, again, you could argue this makes sense. Georgia Innocence Project is a legal organization. But a board filled with lawyers, they wanted to talk about these cases, these stunning examples of injustice. Board meetings became these in-depth discussions of legal strategy, and legal reports went on and on and on. They could only get one board member, the treasurer, to join the finance committee, and nobody would share client services. And while Claire and her new board chair saw the value, began to develop a partnership, and they saw the need for adding other skills, the board didn't get it. A legal organization should be overseen by a group of lawyers, right? No, wrong, actually. So Claire and I worked together on a workshop for the board. I made the case that different skills are essential to meeting all the responsibilities that boards have. We identified how diversity would strengthen the organization and we wanted to help them build that second engine that I talk about. So we did the workshop, I crossed my fingers, off I went to other clients, and I hoped that the seeds I planted would blossom. I reconnected with Claire about 8 months later. In less than 9 months, she and the governance committee added 8 new board members. Listen to this: a CPA, a community leader with a social work background, an accounting professor, a retired chief impact officer of a social services organization with real leadership chops, the editor of a regional newspaper whose brother was wrongfully convicted, an African-American man who is the head of human resources at the Atlanta NPR public radio station. As my son would say, are you picking up what I'm putting down? You get the idea? GIP transformed its board. Now, there will be a cultural shift as they navigate, for sure. But with a shared vision for what is possible for GIP, they will come together and move from a homogenous board of lawyers to a diverse board that sees the opportunity that comes with bringing more people to the organization to grow its reach and power. And the board is beginning to see the different ways it can add value. It's excited about the possibilities. When she told me the story, I was gobsmacked. I'm like, Claire, what did you do? And then she looked at me like I was a little, she just looked at me oddly and she said, well, we did what you told us to do. Now stay tuned, because I created bonus number 2 based on the work that I did with Claire. So our first pillar is people. Claire is bringing the right people to the organization. Number 2, partnership. Remember my friend Teddy at Amanacer? She now has a co-pilot. She's not flying alone. Together they are building a board that is going to enrich the decisions she makes, not just rubber stamp them. And then proactive champions. When Jim Cohen at the Federation in Minneapolis fuels his board by sending Did You Know videos, they're excited to share them. And when Claire's board is not 100% lawyers, many of whom are connected to each other, the organization now has access to different, new spheres of influence. Proactive ambassadors with diverse spheres of influence. Remember, people equals power. Now, I'd like to manage your expectations. You don't go from hot mess to high functioning overnight. It's an evolving thing, but you'll be really surprised at how quickly it can evolve. And you don't need to recruit a third new board members or half new board members to transform it. You need a few good catalysts to sort of tip the board in the right direction, right? Oh, I know what I wanted to say. If you think your board is not functioning well and you're afraid to recruit somebody who's awesome, get over it. Tell these awesome people that you need them. That in order to build a thriving nonprofit, you must have a high functioning board and you need them to help you to ignite that transformation. People love that. I want you to think about some of the specific elements you heard in these stories. The board chair is passionate about the organization and works hard to partner with the ED. Intentional recruitment, standing committees, well-run meetings, board members informed with impact stories. But there's a lot of them. A lot of what I would call elements of a high-functioning board. I've put together a checklist for you. The elements of a high-functioning board. It's a checklist that lists the items and then says kind of the equivalent of, we got that, needs improvement, or the equivalent of, oi. So I think you're going to find it really helpful and excellent material for you and your co-pilot, board, executive director to discuss together. And I want you to have it right now. You're going to see a button on the screen right now at the top right if you're on a desktop, and below the video if you're on a phone. You can download the bonus checklist right now. So you can go ahead and grab that. Now, I tried to make the case about why a high-functioning board matters and what it looks like when it is high-functioning. Now, should we try to build it? Why not? We can move from messy to thriving, from disengaged to fully engaged, from doing just your work to a board that has its own work. You see, high-functioning boards realize they have their own work to do. Low-functioning boards have no clue that they have work. They think their job is either to A, supervise you to make sure your work gets done, or they're ducklings. They're, let me know if you need anything. Mother duck, parent duck. So I want to go through this carefully. The designing the ideal board. I'm going to walk through it, and there will be another resource that is a customizable spreadsheet that you can use to implement the 7 steps I'm about to describe to you. This is a bonus you will receive via email if you stay with us through the Q&A. Okay? Let's give this a go. 7 steps. These are the 7 steps that Claire Gilbert and the board at GIP followed, so we know they work. First, gather a small group, board or non-board, and the executive director for a recruitment task force. Folks who have perhaps watched this webinar and get the critical nature of the work. Step 2, brainstorm the skills, expertise, lived experience you need that you can't afford and you know would add value. Think about the Georgia Innocence Project. A journalist whose brother had been wrongfully convicted. Media, lived experience. A retired nonprofit leader who could be Claire's next co-pilot. An HR professional. Make this list. Organize it by category. That's what you're going to find on this customizable spreadsheet. Now, remember that diversity is critical, but it is not a box to check. When you create your ideal board, there should be diversity criteria listed, of course. But, if that is the only box they are checking and they do not bring any of the other skills, experience, attributes you need, not only are they checking boxes, but you will set them up. You will not be setting them up for success. So Claire needed human resources experience on her board and went recruiting specifically to find an HR person who added diversity. HR can be very helpful in helping you to diversify your candidate pool. Step number 4. Okay, So you get the columns in your spreadsheet and they are customized for your needs. Those are the skills, expertise, attributes with the diversity lens that you need for the ideal board. Now slot in your current board members where they fit and highlight the gaps. That's what I've done with this sample here. So you can see that there are some current board members who check a bunch of different boxes, but there are also yellow highlighted gaps. That brings me to step 5, is you've got to prioritize the gaps. Which ones are most important? So let's say you have 5 gaps, prioritize them 1 to 5, and then in step number 6, I want you to reach consensus about your work, and I want you to present it to the board. Walk them through it, maybe even have them vote on it to approve the composition matrix, this architecture, so that they have approved your goals for your task force efforts. And then the final step number 7, is start a conversation with your task force and the board about how to fill those gaps. Start talking about prospects and leads to prospects. Think creatively about the ponds you can fish in for candidates, right? If you run an equine therapy program, how about for kids with special needs? How about family therapists, right? How about people who understand the magic of horses? There are a lot of different approaches you can take to diversify your candidate pool. Capture it all in a database or spreadsheet, and you'll excuse the pun, off to the races. And this recipe, some sample skills, experience, will all be in the bonus we will email you after the webinar. So as I said, this is the first step. It needs to be first, the architecture. And then you can tackle the myriad of steps to building the high-functioning board. Now, I'm going to show you a slide with a bunch of important steps that follow, but I want you to promise me it won't overwhelm you, because Teddy, Claire, and Jim all had resources to help them with this list that feels a little long. Board member interview, right? How do I create that partnership? Running a terrific board meeting, getting your board to be great storytellers, creating effective committees, working through a crisis. There's a lot of steps after this one step I've shared with you during this webinar. And all of these steps have accompanying resources in our nonprofit leadership lab. They have all made a big difference for Teddy, for Claire, and for Jim. Their organizations are stronger, and they are stronger too because they do work that fuels them. They actually get home for dinner. You can do this. I know you can because I've seen literally thousands of members of the lab improve their boards over the last 4 years based on these resources. I also know you can do it because you're an optimistic problem solver, and that is the best possible combination of attributes you can have to do this work. If you do what I've told you to do today, it will help, I promise you. But as I mentioned, there is a lot to learn. There's a lot to do when it comes to building the board of your dreams. Take another look at that list. And it is, as a lawyer would say, including but not limited to. It's easy to come away from a session like this feeling energized, maybe a little overwhelmed. I've been talking for a while. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the chat, are you feeling hopeful, optimistic, energized, overwhelmed, all of the above? Talk to me. I'd love to hear. Look, assuming that I have energized you with at least some dose of optimism. Yeah, hopeful and challenged, driven, validated. Yeah, this is great. Empowered, optimistic, and thankful. But I know that it's hard to keep this kind of energy up without ongoing support, right? I'd love to give you that ongoing support, which is why I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to explain to you why you might want to consider joining me in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. After that, I'm going to tell you about an extra major bonus and that you can get if you join the lab today. And then we'll finish up. We'll bring Noelani back for some Q&A. So the Nonprofit Leadership Lab, little backstory. A few years ago, I came to the realization that nonprofit leaders weren't getting the help they needed. At least not affordable help. Especially smaller nonprofits. And oh boy, they needed that help in all the areas that we talked about today and in so many others as well. Nonprofit leaders needed something that could provide at an affordable price ongoing professional development and leadership education for both board and staff leaders to raise more money, to build a 5-star board, right? Or a 5-star staff, a smart strategic plan, to be able to attract more people, to grow that army of the engaged we talked about, to lead a balanced life, right? But even just how to lead a balanced life when you don't feel as if being the leader of a nonprofit demands that you do whatever it takes all the time. Because I assure you that doing whatever it takes all the time is unhealthy. I've learned important lessons in my decade as a champion for the nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector needs to save time. And speaking of time, nonprofit leaders just don't have a whole lot of it to spare, and they needed a place where they could have access to templates, and checklists, and other resources that would keep them from having to reinvent the wheel. It would save them time. I also have learned that the sector benefits when leaders feel a sense of connection. And in some ways, most important of all, nonprofit leaders needed this place where they could feel connected to other people going through all the same stuff. Where these nonprofit leaders could learn from each other's successes and failures, get inspired on a tough day. Look, nonprofits are messy. I know this. But it can also be quite lonely, especially when you've had a long history of doing whatever it takes. I can tell you from experience, the importance of having a truly diverse community of peers available to you 24/7 is critical, especially given that so many of us work remotely. So I did a scan. I looked out there. I looked for a place like that I could recommend my blog readers to, that I could tell my podcast listeners about. But here's the thing. I couldn't find it. It wasn't out there. So I created it. And in just a few years, the Nonprofit Leadership Lab, which has been so incredibly rewarding, has helped over 10,000 nonprofit leaders reach amazing new heights. As I like to say, so many of them have gone from messy to thriving. So that's what the lab is all about. It's about providing a platform for affordable professional development, a place to help you save a lot of time and energy, and a place where you can find others, like-minded superheroes like you, who are going through the same challenges, frustrations, and joys as you are. Superheroes you can lean on and who will support you as we all go through this journey together. In just the next few minutes, I'll show you what you get if you join the lab as a member. And in just a minute, I'll give you the link to join if you feel it's right for you, if it's a good fit. But either way, stick around for the Q&A, which will start in just a moment. You already have that downloadable checklist. The second bonus will be coming to you via email after the webinar. So first, let me talk what I mean by affordable. I know you have a question about the cost, and you should. It's really important to me that the lab be affordable for those who run small nonprofits. I want as many people as possible to take advantage of the resources, to feel that sense of community. So our goal is to make sure it would cost less than a single cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee per day. That if we could do that, then it would be affordable for almost everyone. And so that's what we did. The cost of the lab works out to about $1.50 a day. And you get everything for that one price. All the courses, the community, the resources, the small group experiences we call boot camps, everything I'm about to show you. Nothing left out. So let's just assume that you learned something in the lab that leads you to a single $1,000 donation, which, by the way, is a pretty low bar considering what so many members have experienced. But say you do just that. That alone, worth more than 2 years of membership. On the screen right now, you should see a link or a button to join the lab. If you're ready to join right now, you can click and you'll be taken to your own personal invitation to join. If that's you, I'd love for you to take action and join our remarkable community today. But you might still have questions. I'll be answering them as we start the Q&A, but I have a couple of things that I want to say about the lab, and then I'll answer your question. So what do you get when you join the lab? I think as we go through this, you're going to see how much value there is. First, you get dozens of educational courses. You can learn how to build the board of your dreams, dig even deeper on the lesson we spoke about today, increase your fundraising capacity, run more effective board meetings, manage crises and transitions, get press on the cheap, write a fabulous grant proposal. Think of it like the Netflix of nonprofit learning. And just like Netflix, the recordings are available to you watch anytime, 24/7. Don't have to take my word for it. Here's Tracy Barron Phillips. Our courses and master classes have made a tremendous difference for so many members. Look at what you wrote. You ever think about stringing those 3 words together? Best board meeting ever? How do you like them apples? Or Becca Atkins, who learned to build a fantastically effective twin-engine jet with her new board president. Her board is doing its own work. Sounds awesome, right? And here's the thing, any one of these courses is worth 6 months or more of membership. And when I say more, think about this, what is it worth to completely re-energize your board? Or learn a new way to fundraise that brings in thousands of dollars? But at the least, if you go through 1 or 2 of these courses in a year and do nothing else in the lab whatsoever, you'll get your money's worth. But there's a lot more. The courses are just the tip of the iceberg. You'll also get a whole bunch of time-saving resources like checklists and templates. We're talking board member applications and assessments, governance checklists, ED evaluations, board member interview questions, new employee orientation checklists, agendas. We also have dozens of what I like to call quick wins, because I like people to quick win. They're designed to be easy to implement and get you a quick win. Like 3 steps to starting a difficult conversation or a low-stress approach to Giving Tuesday. Listen to some of our members. Fatuma. Listen to this. Village mates, it is possible to make a turnaround. We just did it. It felt like a dream, but I know this is so real. 3 years of struggling alone, my board chair in another country. You will never walk alone. Nancy Mannion Blinn. She got a $150,000 grant from a local foundation to remodel her dental equipment. We've been in business for 28 years and have been using used equipment all this time. I truly believe that what I've learned in this leadership lab has helped me in my journey of becoming fiscally sound over the last 2 years. You do not have any sense of how incredibly rewarding and gratifying it is to me and my team to know that the work that we do helps you in these kinds of ways. You should know that as part of the Leadership Lab, I will support you, your champion, your advocate. I will lift you up, make you laugh from time to time, and you'll get lots of support from me and my team. One of my favorite things to do, a cup of coffee and some time helping our members in our online community group we call The Village. I also host monthly Q&As where I try to answer as many questions as I can. You're going to see a little bite of that in just a minute. And check this out. We've created a database that you can browse and search through that contains many answers to every single question that's been asked during a Q&A since the lab was founded. Awesome. Our amazing team is here to make sure that your experience is 5-star from the moment you become a member. That's what lab member Kareem felt when he said he had never experienced a more human, welcoming onboarding experience, either as a professional or a nonprofit board member. This notion of nurturing you, of taking care of you, of being your champion is built into what we do. You have hard jobs. We know that. And technical advice is only half the battle. You have to feel supported and nurtured. And we do that for you in the lab. And Kareem has made that point here. Danielle Charvose. Several times each year, we host intensive fundraising and grant writing boot camps. We also host board boot camps, optional opportunities for you to dig deep and dramatically improve your results. Here's what Danielle said. Shout out to Noelani Pearl Hunt, who you met earlier, who is one of our leaders in the lab, for her excellent work in running the grant writing boot camp. The first grant I submitted for $20,000 came back awarded with a check in the envelope, and this has never happened before. Boot camp grants have collectively raised hundreds of thousands of dollars during these boot camps, and some of the boot camps enable you to receive CFRE credit as well. Now, I say all the time that people come for the great content, but they stay for the community. The remarkable, kind, generous, funny, joyful community. In fact, literally hundreds of people who joined the lab on the first day are still members 4 years later. When you join the lab, you become a part of a community of peers. You become inspired you become inspired by them like I am every day. And with so many of you working remotely, having a community like this matters more than it ever did before. It also helps to have a network of fellow nonprofit professionals to learn from, to grow with, and who knows, maybe even help you find your next position. Sadaf Fatim Saeed. Joining this group was the best decision I made as the new executive director of a small nonprofit. You can see these in the comments our members have left in our lab community. Technical support, you bet. Coaching, check. But personal and moral support for those of you who do the hardest work there is, it is what makes the lab special. Uma Saman, I don't feel alone anymore. So let's go through everything you get and add it all up. First, if we were to sell each of our courses and master classes individually, they cost about $500 each. We have around 50 of them, so the total value of that alone would be about $25,000. Time-saving resources would sell for about $50 a piece, so the entire library is worth about $2,300. Quick wins in total come to about $1,500. The Q&As and the knowledge base, which again contain the searchable answers to every single question, is worth about $5,000, probably more. Each of our boot camps is individually worth $2,000. As we add all of this up, let's assume you only take one boot camp every year. The village, the book clubs we do, the self-care we do on Friday afternoon, it's all priceless, and I'm not even sure how to value it. But if we can just total up what we can value and nothing else, we're already at almost $36,000 if you bought everything we offer in the lab individually. But you can get it all right now, and all of it for $47 a month. And if you choose to sign up today for a full year, we'll knock 2 months off the price. So an annual membership is only $470, and you're set for the year. It's actually a bargain for what you get, and we did it that way with great intention so that it would be affordable to you. As you consider joining us today, I want to say something important about the values of the Nonprofit Leadership Lab and about the kind of community we are building in the lab. I believe that every organization, for-profit, nonprofit, should have a core set of values, and the lab is actually no different. We're about fueling leadership, lifting our members up, sharing positivity, and nurturing the best in others. We encourage a diverse and inclusive community with authentic and safe discussions, and we do all of that with a sense of joy and, yes, with a sense of humor. And if you're still on the fence, listen to what Jennifer Fowler, a longtime lab member, had to say. The Nonprofit Leadership Lab is a supportive, collaborative, affirmative, and resourceful place that will assist in your personal and organizational development. There is a plethora of resources and a community of people ready and willing to offer guidance and advice as you face challenges, celebrate with you on your wins, and aspire you to do the work of fulfilling your mission. Okay, so we're about to start the Q&A. I want to just answer quick common questions I get. And if you're on the fence, you'll probably want to pay attention. What if you try it and it's just not for you? First, we have very few members asking to cancel each month. But there are, of course, some who do cancel for any variety of reasons. And as a member, you can cancel at any time, for any reason, with no further payments. There's no lock-in beyond the term that you have already paid for. That's it, full stop. You might think you're too busy. Of course you're busy. Will you have time for it? Believe me, we are actually conscious of just how busy you are. But how much of that is because you don't currently have the support you need? A big part of our focus in the lab is helping you to get some of your time back. The lab helps you focus on what's most important, not what's most urgent. Just one example. Think for a minute about how much time you could save just by not having to figure out what questions to ask a prospective board member. Or figuring out how to create an outstanding board orientation process. There are time-saving materials here for you. What about Joan? How active is Joan? Very active. I'm in there answering questions, cheerleading, listening carefully to what our members need so we can build the kind of content and community that best serves you. But it ain't just me. It's most definitely not just me. We have an entire team in-house and an entire team of community leaders and experts, dozens in fact, on different topics like grant writing, branding, marketing, volunteering, fundraising, and more. We bring in the best for you. People like Donald Miller, Julia Campbell, Beth Cantor, Kathleen Kelly Janis, Hiba Hassan. Whenever we perceive a need, we bring in an outside expert for help. For example, during the COVID crisis, the height of the COVID crisis, we brought in someone to help you to understand how to fundraise during a crisis. We had someone come in and help members figure out the whole PPP situation. We do what you need. That's what we're here for, to help the helpers. So we're about to start the Q&A, and I'll answer all of your questions about the 5 steps to leading with intention. I'll also answer any questions you might have about the lab if you're still on the fence. But as I think about it, I figure you probably have 3 choices. You can stay the course. You can do nothing new. But what's going to change for your organization or in your life if you just keep doing what you're already doing? You can go it alone. I guess that's an option, right? This is absolutely a valid choice. But you know how hard it is. It's going to take longer. It's a lot more frustrating, and it's lonely. The third choice is you can let us support you. You can let me support you by joining the lab today. And I do hope you'll give that some serious consideration. All right. So start entering questions. I think there's already been quite a number of them in the chat box. I've seen them with my good peripheral vision. While you're doing that, let me just tell you about our last bonus for today. This is the 2022 Nonprofit Leadership Lab Board Bible. It is a compendium of some of the best content we have inside the lab. And if you join us as a member today, you will receive this board Bible. It will come as an electronic format. And I'm gonna guess you're gonna want to print it out, and I'm gonna guess that at no time at all it will be pretty dog-eared. So, with all of that said, if this feels like the right fit for you, please come join me and our entire community team in the lab today. We look forward to being there for you, to being your biggest advocates and champions. We're here to help you. And with that, I'm gonna drag Noelani back onto the screen. And I think we can probably take some questions and see if we can come up with some answers. And you're on mute, Noelani. As well you should have been.
So you couldn't hear me doing other things like answering members' questions while you were chatting. So, all right. So I'm so excited because I just want to tell you a couple of the things that I caught here. So bow tie rocks.
Yeah,
That's the first thing.
It's crooked. I don't know.
You look great.
Maybe it's, you know what? Maybe it's not my bow tie. Maybe it's my head.
Maybe it might be. People are saying this is just what they needed to hear. So we're so glad that you are here. And I just want to welcome one of our first members who joined while watching the webinar, Lisa. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. We look forward to supporting you.
Yes. So we have a couple questions first about just.
Oh, you're muted again. No, Lonnie, I don't know how that happened.
It's because my iPod died, my AirPod died. So we have a couple of quick questions that are specifically about the membership.
Okay.
So, first question is it possible to have a subscription for an organization and not just the ED?
So here's what we say, and Noelani, feel free to jump in. We know that you will share the materials inside the Leadership Lab with your organization. We want you to. We want you to show a masterclass at a board meeting. We want you to use a template or a checklist or a quick win. But what we say is one member, one login. Okay? So we have many people who have a login for their ED and a login for their board chair. We like one login per person, and it's not but, and we fully expect that you will share this. You will share the resources. And in fact, while I have this, there are some folks who join the lab on their own dime. They start to share those resources with their board, who then say things like, where'd you get this? And they say, well, we got this at the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. And they're like, well, what is that? And then, well, I pay for this out of my own pocket, and a board will then say, we should be paying for that. So, and in fact, we have a resource in the lab, I think, of how to actually make the case to your board to cover the cost.
Right, and you can do things like, for instance, you can, in a board meeting, maybe show one of Joan's or one of our expert master classes while with your board so that afterwards you can have a conversation about it. So we have some really great ways for you to share that. And we have another new member. So yes. Linda is another new member. Welcome, Linda. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks a lot, Linda. Thank you for entrusting us with your professional development. We take it seriously.
Yeah, we're really excited. So we have another question, and Dane is asking a question I can answer really quickly, and it's how often is content added? Almost weekly. We have content that's added, and additionally with that content is you see Joan in the lab often, and we do Q&As and various other things. So it is fresh material. And it can be a personal membership, Dean, or it can be an organizational membership like Joan just talked about.
Fresh material, and sometimes even I get fresh. Like it depends.
All right, so let's dive into some of these questions that are specifically about boards. And if you have questions about the membership, make sure you ask those questions. We'll answer them as we go along. So Kate is asking, what if a board thinks that they don't need improving?
So first, I think it'd be kind of interesting if you could get your board chair to watch this webinar.
right? Is that like I said, is that they don't think they need to. And one of the reasons I created this webinar to begin with is because they don't know what's possible if they actually do function well. They don't actually get how much value and how rewarding it is to be a highly contributing board member. And so, one of the things you might want to think about doing is, do you have colleagues in your sector, in your community, that have boards that are more high functioning than yours, or have a couple of board members on some of those boards who are total rock stars that you could actually connect with your board, bring in, maybe have like a gathering or a get together of board members from other organizations that are more high functioning, so that people could get a bite of the apple of what it tastes like to be on a high functioning board. So that's just one kind of example. You may not be the best messenger, the truth of the matter is, because you might be seen as nagging them to do their jobs. We talk a lot about the non-nagging rule inside the lab.
So I just want to welcome a couple new members, Joan, Deborah, and Timothy. We welcome you. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much. We are absolutely committed to making that investment pay real dividends for you.
All right. So Lizette is asking. She says, our board and its committees meet plenty, but the conversations often get derailed and are off topic from our meeting agendas. Neither the chair or the board president will step in to guide the meetings. How can we wrangle them in to conduct more efficient meetings?
One of the things that I really like to do, and the name again was, Noelani?
Lizette.
One of the things that I really like to do is I like to give boards ownership of a set of sort of operating principles. So what if you were to take your board at a board meeting and open it by saying, we want these board meetings to be really productive and valuable to all the folks around the table. What would have to be true in order for that to happen? What are the values that we all share about good meetings? What are the operating principles, right? So let's say I'm a board member and I happen to be a windbag. I do talk a lot, by the way. I should just own that. But if I'm like a real windbag, right? So I might say at this board meeting, so I know that I talk a lot. Like, shouldn't we have a rule about how making sure that everybody gets heard? Those are the kinds of things. I've get the group to introduce a ditto rule. Lots of board members like to repeat things that were said. Oh, I loved what Noelani just said, and then spend 5 minutes repeating it. What if you introduce the ditto rule? So you then don't take up time, but instead you say, ditto Noelani, and I'd like to make this additional point. So yes, Kathy, I don't know how to pronounce Methweg. We created a set of meeting guiding principles. Bingo, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
All right. And we also have this really great content. Remember, we have the Robert's Rules of Order content that really focuses on making sure that people can be more engaged. It's not about pushing people back from being engaged, but engaging people in the actual meeting. So that's exciting.
Yeah, actually, Robert's Rules of Order is an interesting topic. Many people think it's highly rigid and restrictive, but it actually is a construct that allows for voices to be heard, for no one single person to own the room. It was a very, very interesting expert seminar. So I'll tell you, I don't know a lot about Robert's Rules of Order. So people wanted to hear about Robert's Rules of Order. We went and found the expert on Robert's Rules of Order who gets all excited thinking about them. And she got us all excited. Go figure.
I love Robert's Rules of Order. So I have a great question from Cindy. She says, I believe that most board members and people at large are well-meaning.
They are.
But how best to handle if you get a real a-hole, she says, pardon her French, egotistical, power-hungry, micromanaging person in the board chair seat?
Well, And the name again, I'm so sorry.
Cindy.
Cindy. So one of the things we talk about in the lab is, how did that person get in that job to begin with? Right? Right. And how can you work with your board to build a leadership pipeline that puts people who are not a-holes in the seat at the head of the table? So we talk about that. It's really a fundamental question, right? How do you recruit for people with leadership attributes and the kind of attributes you want at the head of the table? And somebody will say, well, no one else wanted to be the board chair, right? That's one of those problems in building that architecture that I spoke about. There's a couple of very quick things I want to say. If you don't have term limits, I hope you have term limits, because the way to get you don't typically fire board members unless they've gone egregiously over the line. You actually decrease their power by increasing the power of other members of the board at the table. So whether it's a committee, so let's say there's no term limits, toxic board chair. And let's say you have some real alignment and allies, put them on your nominations and governance committee, have them build that architecture, include term limits, start to strengthen the voices of the other people at the table and make that board chair's voice quieter. That's one of the things we talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to welcome Kim and Chris, who just joined the lab. Welcome, Kim and Chris. We're excited.
We'll see on the other side.
And Yuko just asked a really great question that I just wanted to answer really quickly.
Please.
You know, the Leadership Lab, she's asking a question. She's part of the Asian American community, and their nonprofit is too. It's member supported, and she's got concerns about whether or not the content might fit their type of nonprofit. Yuko, hi, welcome. I'm hoping you join. I'm Asian American too, so we definitely make sure that everyone feels welcome, not just Asian Americans or Latinos or African or Black Americans. We make sure that everyone's here, and we make sure that our lab content reflects that as well. So please, we would love for you to join us.
And if I may, it is a commitment that I feel deeply, that the Nonprofit Leadership Lab can, in fact, have a long-term impact on the sector. We are in the process, as we speak, of a DEI journey with a firm that is digging in every nook and cranny of the lab to make sure, from content to marketing to instructors, that we are a place where you feel a sense of belonging, where nonprofit leaders who are members of the lab can tap into resources to move on their own journeys. Success of leaders of color means a great deal to us.
Yes, it definitely does. And welcome, Dane. We're so happy to have you as a new member. We're very excited to see you. And not only is the lab here for a diverse group of people and their racial background, but also for a diverse group of nonprofits, not only 501c3s, but 501c6s and other nonprofits we welcome, and we'll be able to help you with our content. So Mary Wolf has a question. How important and how do I best help board members feel connected to each other and feel like they have a shared connection? Zoom has killed that vibe, and it's hard to give up too much meeting time for the soft stuff.
First of all, don't give up on Zoom as a mechanism. I actually think that Zoom is really underrated in terms of its ability to create team and shared connections. I can actually tell you that there are 14 members of what somebody dubbed Jonelandia, and I can tell you that Noelani has worked for me for almost 2 years, and I have never met her. And that Zoom actually, I think, provides an interesting way to be connected because you're actually in someone's home, right? And I believe that during the pandemic, people had to be more intentional about the soft stuff. in order to build that kind of collegiality. I don't think of the soft stuff as something you try to make time for if you can. Richard Shate, who is the author of Governance as Leadership, speaks to the philosophy that a strong board cannot be a truly strong board if it does not behave as a cohesive unit, especially in times of crisis. And approving financial statements does not create a cohesive unit. But talking about your shared values, right? Icebreakers, and I know people roll their eyes, but icebreakers with real meat to them, where people share their stories, create a cohesive unit that will make all the difference when you go through strategic planning and there's tensions. If you have a crisis where your leadership, where your executive director leaves, all of these things demand cohesion, and you have to do that with intentionality.
You know, Adam and Carla agree with you. They're saying that Zoom has actually driven up their board engagement, and I can attest to the relationship that I have with the entire team, being the only one on the West Coast, that I don't feel any less connected to them using Zoom than I would if we met in person. So Anne has a question. One board she works with and have been on in the past has their members elected by a membership. So in addition to trying to get the right people to run, we have to convince the membership that they need to vote for these members. The result is that we have to focus on board development every year if we want any function. Trying to change the bylaws to get appointed board members rather than elected ones will be a challenge. I think my answer is that we have to focus on board training even more, or recruiting who we want to actually run. Any thoughts on this?
You're totally on the right track. You're totally on the right track. There's so much in an elected membership, and we have plenty of lab members who fall into this category, and I coach organizations that have elected memberships as well. There's a lot of work to do behind the scenes to make sure that the right person steps up to be put on the ballot. You cannot leave that you just can't leave that to its own devices. So yes, on board training. And I will tell you that I coach the CEO of a board that is elected from chapter boards and affiliate boards. And we have actually shifted the thinking of the board, and we have added some at-large, and the CEO has made the case to add some at-large seats by making the case for what's possible in terms of skills and expertise that are gap skills that they can't find amongst their elected membership. And it was a surprisingly, we were prepared for battle. And it was almost you have me at hello. So this particular organization, which is a huge, very well-known organization, will this year have a number of at-large seats. They will not be appointed by the CEO. They will go through a traditional recruitment process, giving the CEO so much more flexibility and actually giving the board additional horsepower.
All right, so I just want to welcome Cheryl. She just joined.
Hi, Cheryl. Welcome.
Very exciting. All right, so we have two very similar questions. Both Anne and Pam are asking questions on how do you encourage disengaged or vindictive board members to resign or step down?
So you make them feel, what was it, vindictive or what?
Or disengaged.
Yeah, so in the masterclass that I created called Build the Board of Your Dreams, I talk about the rule of thirds. That a good grade B board has a third high performers, a third disengaged, and a third of people who will do something if you ask them. The disengaged people, you're probably not going to actually make a whole lot of movement with them. Where you want to focus is on those people who will do something if you ask. And you want to try to actually ignite them, give them something special to do, have them present it to the board, feel like $1 million, and all of a sudden they become high performers. The object of the game it's not a game exactly, but the object of the game is to increase your high performers so that you're disengaged, which unkindly we might call dead weight, feels like dead weight and self-selects off. That's the ideal strategy for dealing with disengaged. Again, with vindictive, if we use words like vindictive or toxic, the first thing I would really just want to say is people don't join boards to be toxic or vindictive, right? They join to have value. They join to find some kind of meaning and purpose. They might have joined for the wrong reasons. They might have joined because of ego. And that makes it all the more important that your board interview process vet those things out. Like when I see a vindictive board member, I wonder, how did that person pass the muster of an interview process, right? But I think that there are conversations, and we're actually doing an expert seminar in the lab on Friday on facilitating brave conversations. Having an executive director or a board chair to have a brave conversation with someone who's disruptive or vindictive or toxic, to really unearth what is at the heart of that. Is this really a good fit for you, right? Rather than, vote them off the island or, try to fire them. Can you actually come from a place of curiosity and get them to reveal what the issues are that might lead you to a conversation that says, it sounds like you don't respect me very much as an executive director. And I hear that. And I think that you should be on a board where you really respect the executive director. I don't think everyone on the board feels that way. Maybe there's a different organization where your respect and admiration for the leadership is in a different place. So those are some of the options you can take with difficult board members.
So we have a few more questions, and we want to make sure that we respect people's time. So we're going to go into a lightning round. All right, Joan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Marcel's asking, how does an ED help a board focus on future planning versus past events?
You make time for it on an agenda. I want every agenda to have some different levels of engagement, right? If you're just on the tarmac talking about the details of the centerpieces at the gala, that's where you'll stay. And then the second thing I would recommend is that I think that every board should engage in an annual board retreat where you actually where you can really focus and breathe through generative conversations.
Shelly's asking, what's the best thing to say to board members who talk to each other but leave you out of the loop as the ED?
That's not a lightning round question exactly. It kind of depends, right? I would have a brave conversation and say, I understand that there's some conversations happening. I'd really like to understand what those are about. If they're about my performance, I'd really like to hear what those things are so that I can hear them and potentially make some changes based on that. But the more that I know about what the board is thinking and feeling about its role in the organization, the better I can lead it and the better I can partner with you.
So I know this next question is not a lightning round question, but I think we might have some great content for them. So T. Tompkin is asking, what are some ideas you have for fundraising in the pandemic?
So I'm going to say one global thing, and then I'll let Noelani speak to it. Crisis fundraising is hard, right? What you want to do in most cases, and I talk about this a lot in the lab, is you want to talk about what's possible. What I call is embrace the possibility of the destination. Where do you want the organization to go, right? Like I joined an organization that was in financial disarray. I didn't talk very much about what financial disarray it was in. I talked about where I wanted to take it. And I ended up getting very successful at fundraising because people embraced the possibilities, the opportunities that came with the destination that the picture I was painting of the destination. So I would really focus on that. Far too often we focus on please, please, please help us dig out so we don't fold or so we can continue to do X. I also would lastly say, we talked a lot about a bridge, right? We are here. This is a difficult time. Help us bridge from here where we are to where we want to go, right? It's a very different framing from dig us out. It's help us build the bridge from here to where we want to go.
All right, so this one I'll answer just really quickly. So it says, DeRay is asking if we meet as a Leadership Lab community monthly. And what I would say is we meet daily in the village. So I would say if you're worried about that, I would say, come on in. If you haven't done it yet, what's stopping you? You need to be a part of our little community. And we do meet on a daily basis in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab Village. So I know we haven't been able to get to everyone's question, but I do have this last one because I know that a lot of our EDs might be feeling the same way or been in the same situation. So Pam is saying that she's been the ED for a small nonprofit for 8 years. And this is the first year they've had a negative balance. Projected to be $30,000. Not sure if that's tangibly accurate. The board won't pass the budget until it's balanced. The board is basically giving me an ultimatum to raise $30,000 or there will be staff cuts. Is it feasible to raise $30,000 fast? I don't feel motivated. I'm terrified that I'm going to lose my job. What do I do?
So I don't know what $30,000 represents of your total budgets. That I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. Is it easy to raise $30,000 fast? And it's hard for me to answer that question too. Because I don't know what your prospect, I don't know what your prospect, sort of your prospect database looks like. I don't know who's giving it what level. But I guess what I would say is the kind of resources that we have in the lab are going to help you change that dynamic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They really are going to help you change that dynamic. Those folks who have participated in our fundraising boot camps have actually really begun to build a different kind of relationship with their boards around raising money, right? Because where you want to get to, there you go, $215,000, not many donors. So, could you say to the board, let's make it a matching grant. If you put up $15,000, I can make that a matching grant and I can go and try to raise the additional 15. So there's lots of different strategies, but there's a fundamental challenge in the dynamic that you have described, Pam, which is about the fact that the onus is on you to raise that money, right? Whereas if you are in my twin engine jet, there's a sense that we're all in this together. And I also, the last thing I want to say is that I want you to make sure cutting things is an easy answer. But make sure that if you lose the battle and you have to make cuts, bring that to life for them in a way that actually kind of hurts, right? Where they're like, oh, I don't really want to cut that. How could we possibly cut that? They're not numbers. They're not just numbers. And the more that you think about the fact that they're not numbers, the more you'll communicate in a way that your board will hear you and want to be part of the solution. So I hope that that's helpful. Before we actually close up, I just wanted to ask this one question. For those of you who are still on with us, if you are, maybe you're just enjoying the conversation, and I'm fully good at that. If you're thinking about joining the lab and you're on the fence, and there's something that you would articulate about why you're on the fence, if you want to toss it in the chat, Noelani and I will spend just a couple of last minutes with what I call the fence questions, and then we'll not hold you up any longer, and and just say thank you and let you get back to, in the case of your executive directors, to your day job, and in the case of board members, to your day job.
You know, it's funny. I know that you might be on the fence, and Malik, thank you for joining. You might be on the fence, but for those of you who heard our little friend Rafa in the background with Joan, he says join today. So, and you can never turn down a little kitten who jumps through a fiery hoop. You can never turn it down.
So I'm sorry, yeah. The dog got taken out, but the cat is going to be part of the webinar. Rafa is the Hebrew word for healing, and he is our pandemic kitten. Let me just say, I want to ask, on the fence speak about the lab, as I feel my board president will be offended. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
It feels like it's more for executive directors than board members. I would say, I'm going to say this to be really honest, there are more executive directors than board members, but there is an excellent cohort of board members. There is content that board chairs and board members are finding enormously valuable. We have a small group intensive board boot camp that we have just started. So we are very conscious. I am deeply committed to building the leadership muscles of board chairs. So join us. Give it a month or two, and I think you're going to find just what you need in terms of professional development, and I'm not sure where else you would find it. Why your board president would be offended, I need to know a little bit more about that.
Well, I can probably say something to that. I know for me as an ED, before I joined Joan's team, I shared that I was part of this great leadership group, and they were ecstatic and wanted to know more. So, you know, without knowing exact details of why they might be offended, it's a little bit hard to say there. And then again, we have about the board members versus EDs. Let's see, what else do we have here?
By the way, Cindy Leonard, thank you for. So Cindy Leonard, here's something for those of you who are thinking about for board members. Cindy says, I just joined the lab and quickly poked around. Folks, I'm not being paid to say this. I've never even met Cindy Leonard, but I look forward to meeting you.
We do.
Mention there. Remember, my philosophy is that a highly functioning nonprofit is like a twin-engine jet. If I did not have material, if I did not honor the professional development of board members, it wouldn't say too much about me. So, so just know that as well.
Well, and Kathy is saying here, as a board chair, she's on the board, but would want to discuss it with the ED who didn't attend this webinar. We have a lot of ED and board presidents who are in the lab. So that twin engine jet, they're both there. So we would love to have you and your ED there. And Cheryl asked if that first document, she didn't have a chance to grab it. And Cheryl, I know that you joined the lab, so you can actually grab it also in the lab.
Yep.
Great.
I think that wraps us up. Noelani, thank you very much for hosting this afternoon, and for Noelani and our members of our team have a deep commitment to nonprofits. Noelani has been an executive director and a board member, and so we and I too have sat at pretty much every seat at the nonprofit table, and so we have stood in your shoes. And not only you can count on us to support you, challenge you, ask you tough questions, be compassionate truth tellers, and do everything we can to fuel your success as a leader and a manager of at your nonprofit. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Yes, and the spreadsheet bonus will be emailed to you for those of you who have joined us through the Q&A. Hope you found the Q&A helpful, because it is actually just like the Q&As we do inside the lab. So we wanted to give you a little appetizer. Noelani?
And to quote one of our new members, Cheryl, let's go. All right, we hope to see you in the lab.
All right, thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Take good care.